Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral underway in London. The city's daily COVID tally falls below the 7,000 mark. And in Taiwan, Hualien jolted by a magnitude 5.9 earthquake today. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral is taking place today at London's Westminster Abbey. The service will be attended by 2,000 people, among them world leaders. Monday has been declared a British public holiday in honor of the monarch, who passed away on the 8th of September at her Balmoral estate in Scotland at the age of 96. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The doors of the 900-year-old Westminster Hall closed to mourners at 6:30 a.m. UK time this morning, ahead of Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral. This marked the end of more than 4 days of the monarch's coffin lying in state there, during which time hundreds of thousands of people filed past to pay their respects. The Queen's funeral is the first state funeral held in the UK since that of Winston Churchill, the first of 15 prime ministers during Elizabeth's reign in 1965. The service is being broadcast live to more than 200 countries and territories worldwide and screened in parks and public spaces across Britain. The Queen's coffin was taken from Westminster Hall across the road to Westminster Abbey for the funeral on a royal gun carriage drawn by 142 Royal Navy sailors. The same carriage was used to carry the coffins of late Kings Edward VII, George V and George VI, and of Winston Churchill. The service in the Gothic medieval Westminster Abbey, where Elizabeth was married in 1947 and crowned in 1953, is being attended by 2,000 people. Among the guests are world leaders such as US President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, members of other European royal families, and staff from the British National Health Service. Police officers from around the UK are on duty as part of the biggest one-day policing operation in London's history. The service will end with 2 minutes of silence, followed by the national anthem and a piper's lament. After the funeral, the Queen's coffin will be taken in a procession ringed by units of the armed forces in dress uniforms, with the Queen's children walking behind to Wellington Arch near Hyde Park. There, it will be placed in a hearse to be driven to Windsor for another procession along the Long Walk, a 5-kilometre avenue leading to the town's castle, before a committal service in St George's Chapel. She will then be laid to rest with her late husband, Prince Philip, at a private family service. Daniel Rao, TVB News.
Back here at home, the Hong Kong Association of Athletic Affiliates' decision last week to cancel this November's marathon continues to hit the headlines. Today, the government noted that the announcement came as a shock. The Commissioner for Sports said the government and the association had been engaged in regular negotiations. Meanwhile, the former Chief Secretary for Administration, Henry Tang, remarked that the recent cancellations of large-scale events have eroded Hong Kong's status as an international hub. Timothy Lee has more.
Plagued by delays and cuts in the runner quota, this year's marathon has now been added to the list of large-scale events eliminated by COVID-19. Commissioner for Sports Yeung Tak Keung revealed that the Hong Kong Association of Athletics Affiliates, or HKAAA, had requested authorities to increase the runner quota for the marathon from last year's 18,000 people to 33,000 this year. But due to pandemic concerns, the government insisted on reducing athlete participation numbers, with the two parties agreeing on a quota of 25,000 runners. The HKAAA was also willing to split the runners into several groups to help avoid transmission of the virus. Earlier this month, the Athletic Association issued an ultimatum to the government, announcing that they will cancel the marathon if authorities do not grant the event an official approval by the 15th of September. Although the Athletic Association stated one of the factors behind their decision to cancel the marathon 2 months ahead of the scheduled event was a lack of preparation time, Yeung said he does not understand that explanation. He noted that last year, the organization was able to hold the event with the same preparation time. The Commissioner for Sports noted that authorities responded to the HKAA's request to find out if the marathon could be held in Victoria Park in February next year. But after the Athletic Association was informed about the park's schedule in February, the association decided to cancel the event directly. Speaking with TVB, former Chief Secretary for Administration Henry Tang pointed out the adverse effects brought by the cancellation of many of the city's large-scale events.
I think Hong Kong Center as a regional business center and also Hong Kong being known for having a place to do large-scale exhibitions and fairs has already been eroded by the departure or the cancellation of many of these events. These have seriously eroded our competitiveness, and if we don't do anything immediately, I am afraid we will lose some of them permanently.
Meanwhile, the 2023 World Dragon Boat Racing Championships, another athletic event previously set to be held in Hong Kong, has been moved from the SAR to Thailand due to COVID restriction policies. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
As the government has yet to confirm a timetable for relaxing quarantine measures for inbound travelers, Henry Tang believes the 0+7 scheme should be implemented as soon as possible. Some epidemiologists pointed out that while a relaxation of quarantine measures is acceptable, inbound travelers will need to perform PCR tests in increasingly regular intervals. Timothy Lee reports.
Hopes for an end to the hotel quarantine measure seem to be nearing reality as authorities revealed recently that they are planning to scrap the need for quarantine hotels in the near future. Former Chief Secretary for Administration Henry Tang, who is also a member of the Standing Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, welcomes the government's considerations, saying that the city's economy cannot take any further hits.
I know many of international top managements. They have placed different business units elsewhere in Asia where they can manage their regional business much better without the travel restrictions. But I will still advocate that even a 0+3 arrangement, as long as we have proper both PCR and RAT tests in the process, we can catch those as soon as possible who are infected so that they don't spread the disease around.
Advocates for the 0+7 scheme include Executive Council member Jeffrey Lam, who also urged the administration to further relax the scheme to just 3 days of medical surveillance. Several EXCO members are concerned about international events and businesses leaving the city permanently, including the Royal Caribbean Cruises Spectrum of the Seas cruise line. Sources say the cruise company has departed from its home port in the city for the last time due to COVID restrictions. Addressing concerns about an increase in overseas infections due to the adoption of the 0+7 scheme, health experts said the current color code system is capable of preventing the risks. Government epidemiologist Albert Au believes scrapping the hotel quarantine scheme is an acceptable option, but inbound travelers will need to perform more PCR tests to ensure the protection of the city. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Hong Kong registered 6,260 new COVID infections today, the first time that the number has dropped below the 7,000 mark since August 24th this year. The COVID-19 pandemic, meanwhile, has claimed 10 more lives in the city. Christy Khan has more.
The city has seen a dip in daily COVID caseloads over the week. Today, some 6,000 new locally transmitted cases were reported. Health officials said if the local epidemic situation continues to stabilize, there will be room of further relaxation of social distancing measures.
The government will review a series of factors to see whether social distancing measures at restaurants would be relaxed. It would depend on the trend of the epidemic, whether it is a stabilizing trend. If the number of cases climb down, there will be less pressure on the healthcare system and there will be room for further relaxation.
Asked if the authorities are worried that more inbound travelers will spread the virus in the community, the Center for Health Protection in response said they expect some travelers to test positive for the virus after leaving the quarantine hotels under the current 3+4 arrangements.
We have a very stringent testing regime for inbound travelers. If they are carriers of the virus, they would be identified promptly and be required to undergo either home quarantine or hotel quarantine. Some would be tested positive on the 5th day. So these people would be subject to an amber code, and they would not be allowed to enter high-risk premises like restaurants. And also we would check whether they have complied with the compulsory quarantine notice on testing.
More than 1,800 COVID cases were reported across 866 schools today. 20 schools are required to suspend certain classes for a week. Defending Assemblies of God Kindergarten, however, has to suspend all classes after the school reported 29 coronavirus infections. 4 more residential care homes reported new COVID cases. 58 residents were sent to quarantine. Christy Khan, TVB News.
Southeastern Taiwan has been struck by a magnitude 6.8 quake and hundreds of tremors over the past 2 days, leaving at least 1 dead and 146 injured. Today, one of the hardest hit counties, Hualien, was jolted by yet another quake, which reached a magnitude of 5.9. Jackie Lin tells us more.
More footage emerged from the crumbled building in earthquake-rattled Hualien County. As the last 2 trapped in the rubble, a mother and daughter were extricated. The girl still dazed from the devastation. Sunday's earthquake also left a cement worker dead. Some Hualien residents camped out the entire night, fearing for their lives after seeing the ceilings of their homes collapse. Schools, too, a sight of chaos. At around 10 a.m., Hualien was hit by another magnitude 5.9 quake. Authorities say that was caused by Sunday's main quake in Taitung and did not rule out further aftershocks. As of Monday noon, that magnitude 6.8 earthquake had triggered at least 150 more tremors. And southeastern Taiwan is expecting days of disruption at their main transport arteries. Multiple roads blocked by boulders from landslides. A mess of twisted metal and snapped cables is all that remains of this flyover, which is one of the numerous damaged bridges and railways connected to Hualien and Taitung. An odd natural phenomenon, too, captured in Penghu, in which a school of fish swarmed to form a tornado ahead of the major quake on Sunday. Taiwan authorities have warned aftershocks may continue over the coming month, with tremors possibly reaching magnitude 5 or above in the next few days. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Beijing says it has made solemn complaints with the U.S. over President Joe Biden's statement that U.S. forces will defend Taiwan if China tries to invade the island. Biden said yes when asked whether U.S. forces, U.S. men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion of the island. The answer came during an interview broadcast yesterday on CBS News' 60 Minutes program. That marks Biden's most explicit statement so far on the issue, and it drew condemnation from Beijing today. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said it seriously violates the One China principle and sends a severely wrong signal to the separatist forces of Taiwan independence. CBS News reported the White House said after the interview that U.S. policy hasn't changed. That policy says Washington wants to see Taiwan's status resolved peacefully. But it doesn't say whether U.S. forces might be sent to defend Taiwan in response to an attack by mainland military units. And still ahead after the break. Ukraine's leader vows no let-up in fighting to regain more territory lost to Russian forces. The EU moves to cut Hungary funding over damaging democracy. And the local unemployment rate falls slightly to 4.1%. Welcome back to TVB News. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed there will be no let-up in fighting to reclaim more territory lost to Russia after making a series of gains in recent weeks. Meanwhile, Russia claimed to have successfully repelled a Ukrainian offensive in the Kherson region, saying 180 Ukrainian servicemen had been killed. Tracy Furness reports.
Ukraine continues to bury its dead. This soldier, Roman Kozenko, died in Izium and was a hero from the 2014 Maidan Revolution. He was a very skilled military man and a specialist in his field. There are few like him in Ukraine, unfortunately. They are dying, his fellow soldier Mykola said. President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed in his nightly video address on Sunday to make more gains against Russian forces. Maybe now it seems to some that after a series of victories, we will have a lull. But this is not a lull. This is a preparation for the next series because Ukraine must be free, said Zelensky. Loud explosions continue to be heard in Kozacha Lopan Sunday, more than a week after the village, just 2 kilometers from the Russian border, was retaken by the Ukrainian forces. Residents took shelter in a building fortified by sandbags during the Russian bombardment. It's still scary now. There is nowhere to go. For most, these are the only houses we have, and nobody knows what's going to come next. The biggest thing for the people here is fear, said Julia Leremenko. We are all very tired. We just want this to end and for the presidents of Ukraine and Russia to reach some compromise so we don't have to suffer or die. Ukrainian authorities said some of the buildings in the village were used by Russian forces to hold captives and torture people during their occupation. President Zelensky said 10 such torture chambers had been discovered since Russia's hasty retreat from the area. Meanwhile, Russia claimed Sunday to have successfully repelled a Ukrainian offensive in the Kherson region, suggesting at least 120 Ukrainian servicemen had been killed. Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson Igor Konashenkov said tanks, armored combat vehicles and other military hardware had been destroyed, but there has been no independent means to verify his claims. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
The European Commission has recommended that the European Union should suspend around 7.5 billion euros in funding to Hungary. This over concerns that the nation's democracy and the possible mismanagement of EU money. The money would come from cohesion funds granted to Hungary. These funds help poorer member states to bring their economies and infrastructure up to EU standards. Any suspension might be approved by a qualified majority of EU member states. This amounts to 55% of the bloc's 27 countries. They have 1 month to decide whether to freeze Hungary's funds, but in exceptional circumstances can extend that period to 2 months. The European Commission has accused Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán of dismantling democratic institutions, clamping down on press freedom, and infringing on minority rights. Orbán, who has been in office since 2010, denies the accusations. Hungary's government has pledged to address the Commission's concerns in order to avoid the fund suspension. Back here at home, the city's latest jobless rate slipped to 4.1%, marking a decline for the 4th consecutive month. Between June and August, 161,900 Hong Kong residents were out of a job. That's a drop of 0.2 percentage points compared with the period from May to July. Underemployment also shed 0.2 percentage points to 2%. Improvements could be seen across major sectors, including those related to consumption, travel, catering, and retail businesses. Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun says the labor market is expected to improve further over the near term, while the labor market is set to be propped up by a new round of the consumption voucher scheme. Sun says the recently tightened financial situation could dampen local consumption demand. Chief Executive John Lee has appointed Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan as the chairman of the Candidate Eligibility Review Committee. Chan will replace Financial Secretary Paul Chan as the new chairman. Additionally, Secretary for Home and Youth Affairs Alice Mack has been appointed as one of the committee members as well. The new appointments took effect today. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Money Matters is up shortly. Bye for now.